You know, the AI that's everywhere today, it kind of feels like it just popped up out of nowhere. But that's not the real story. The real story is full of false starts, dead ends, and yeah, some pretty bitter rivalries. We're going to dive into one of those conflicts today, a clash between two geniuses that kicked off the very first AI winter and basically slammed the brakes on progress for a decade. So let's start with a bit of a mystery. Picture this, it's 1992, and the BBC is talking about this incredible machine, the Perceptron, almost like it's some lost piece of ancient technology. A machine that could learn, that was supposed to change the world, but then it just disappeared. This is the story of that machine and why it vanished. And you know, this whole thing kicks off in a pretty unexpected place. Not some fancy university lab, but a high school. But this wasn't just any high school. This place was a factory for geniuses, and it produced two future titans of AI who, well, would end up becoming bitter rivals. So here they are, Marvin Minsky and Frank Rosenblatt. These guys were on the same level, intellectually. They graduated just a year apart from the Bronx High School of Science. I mean, this place is legendary. It's churned out 9 Nobel Prize winners. So you've got these two brilliant minds, both set for big things, but they're about to head down two completely different paths for what AI should be. Okay, and here's the crazy part. Minsky, who would later become the biggest critic of this whole brain-inspired AI thing, he actually started out as a true believer. Back in '51, he built this thing called the Snark. It was this wild mess of wires and gears, and it was designed to act like a rat learning its way through a maze. So yeah, the guy who tried to kill neural networks was, ironically, one of the first people to build one. All right, so that's Minsky. Now let's switch gears to his rival, Rosenblatt, and the invention that was about to make him famous, and put him right in Minsky's crosshairs. So, 1957, Rosenblatt drops a bombshell, the Perceptron. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just another machine. It was a whole new way of thinking. Instead of feeding a computer a bunch of rigid, logical rules, you could teach it. It would learn from examples, kind of like how a child learns. This was a brand new path for AI, one that was inspired by the messy, complex wiring of the human brain, not just pure logic. And the best part, he didn't just write a paper about it. He actually built the thing. The Mark I Perceptron was a sight to behold. A giant web of wires, sensors, motors. It was alive. When it would guess a letter and get it wrong, you'd hear these little motors whirring, physically adjusting the connections, literally rewiring itself to get smarter. And guess what? It worked. It actually taught itself to read letters. I mean, can you imagine a machine that could teach itself to see? This was a huge deal, an absolute media sensation. And when the media loves something, the funding follows, especially from the military. Rosenblatt became this celebrity academic. He was the guy driving sports cars, playing piano for the press, totally not your typical quiet lab coat-wearing scientist of the era. But all that fame, all that hype around the Perceptron, it started to rub some people the wrong way. Especially his old classmate from the Bronx, Marvin Minsky, who by now was a big shot over at MIT. And this is where things get, well, complicated. It really comes down to one of the oldest stories in the book. Money. See, there was only so much government funding to go around for AI research. And as Rosenblatt and his connectionist ideas became the hot new thing, they started sucking up all the oxygen and all the cash. Minsky, who was pushing a totally different approach called symbolic AI, saw this and realized, hey, this isn't just an academic debate anymore. This is a fight for survival. So the tension just keeps building. What started as arguments in stuffy conference rooms was about to blow up into an all-out intellectual war. And Minsky decided it was time to drop a bomb. Not another machine, though. No, he chose the ultimate academic weapon, a book. So in 1969, Minsky and his co-author Seymour Papert release a book. The title? Just Perceptrons. Super simple, but its goal was anything but. This book was engineered from the ground up to be a complete and total mathematical demolition of Frank Rosenblatt's entire body of work. Okay, so what was their big gotcha? It all came down to a really simple logic puzzle called XOR. Now, think of it this way. You have two light switches for one light. You want the light to be on if one switch is flipped, but off if both are flipped up or if both are flipped down. Simple, right? Well, Minsky proved mathematically that the single-layer perceptron just couldn't do it. It couldn't solve this one basic problem, and that, he argued, was its fatal flaw. But Minsky didn't stop with the math. No, he went for the jugular. In the book's introduction, he basically says, in public, for everyone to read, that most of Rosenblatt's writing is scientifically worthless. I mean, in the academic world, that is an absolutely brutal, personal attack. Now, here's the thing. Rosenblatt already knew that you could probably solve the XOR problem by just adding more layers of neurons to the perceptron. But Minsky saw that coming. So, in the book, he basically says, yeah, sure, maybe adding more layers would work in theory, but it's computationally impossible to actually train them. It's a dead end. He didn't just point out a flaw, he claimed the fix was impossible, effectively killing the whole idea right then and there. And the fallout from this book, it was immediate. And it was catastrophic, not just for the research, but for Frank Rosenblatt, the man. And Minsky's attack, it worked perfectly. I mean, this is a Turing Award winner, telling everyone the field is a dead end. So, boom, funding for neural networks just dried up. It vanished. And then, just 2 years later, the story takes a truly tragic turn. On his 43rd birthday, Frank Rosenblatt dies in a boating accident. That 1-2 punch, the book and his death, is what really kicked off the first AI winter, a whole decade where everything just stopped. Years go by, and then long after Rosenblatt was gone, Minsky put out a new edition of the book, and this time he took out those really personal attacks from the introduction, and he added a simple dedication in memory of Frank Rosenblatt. You know, for some people it was a nice gesture, but for a lot of others, it just felt way too little and way too late. So, okay, why are we talking about this ancient history? Why does any of this matter now? Because of one huge thing. Marvin Minsky was wrong. That idea he called a dead end, the one he said was computationally impossible, multi-layer networks, that is the literal foundation of almost all the AI we use today. We're talking deep learning, facial recognition, the stuff that runs ChatGPT. It all traces right back to Rosenblatt's perceptron. In the end, Rosenblatt got the last laugh. In a way, his legacy was finally officially vindicated. In 2004, one of the biggest engineering groups in the world, the IEEE, created the Frank Rosenblatt Award. It was the ultimate recognition that he was a true pioneer, a guy whose ideas were just way, way ahead of the curve. Which leaves us with this really tough question, right? What do we make of this? Was Minsky's takedown just good science, a harsh but necessary correction that got rid of some bad ideas? Or was it something else, a personal vendetta that went way too far, that maybe even cost a man his life and set the entire field of AI back by a decade? The answer? Well, it's just as complicated as the two men at the center of it all.